It's just a little under a year. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're here to talk about the future of justice and the future of Wingless. And welcome, Brian.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about comics amid everything that's going on right now. It's been a pleasure creating justice and trying to, kind of build up this world of Wingless comics. So it's actually a really great, opportunity.
That's awesome. So tell us more about yourself. What's your background? How did you get to this point?
Going back as far as I can remember, I always had a comic book in my backpack, but I was also like a jock. So, growing up when I did, it was kind of like, oh man, we're going to hide the comic books, hide our love of D&D or whatever else in video games, because it wasn't as cool as it is now.
Yep.
But that 90s run of X-Men comics with Jim Lee, I think for a lot of us, it changed, everything. And then right on the heels of that with Image, you know what I mean? Like it just really, really made a big impact. So it's something I've always wanted to get into. I started novel writing and I published a few years back my first novel. And that just kind of segued into being able to write comics. It gave me that kind of the platform, kind of the understanding. And so I'm really fortunate in that, obviously, in addition to schooling and really learning the craft and really trying to be as much of a fan creator as I can.
That's really cool. So do you remember, you said you're always walking around with a comic in your bag.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first comic?
Very first comic. Actually, yes, man. So my brother's still mad at me about it, and my mom is mad at both of us for this. But my mom had bought us, and it's before I think I was, born. But the first comic I remember reading or looking at was the Muhammad Ali versus Superman, like the Prestige edition, the huge one with everybody on the background. We still have it, right? It barely has a cover on it. It's all crumpled up. It's totally just run through because we didn't have an appreciation of how amazing that was going to be and how amazing it would be now.
Yeah.
But I first wanted to make a hero after I saw Superman with the blue robe on, right? Like, so for me, it was like, hey, like Superman with the blue cape, like it was amazing. Like it blew my mind as a kid. And from then I was sold, man.
That's awesome. That's such a good book. That's such a good book.
Right. It really is. I don't, obviously as a kid, I didn't realize the depth to it. But going back and revisiting it as an adult, and I even did a little spotlight on my Instagram about it, books that changed our lives. Just all the notes in there and the tones, and having Superman get beaten, but he won't, fall. And Ali is the greatest, and Superman's, it's just, there are just so many levels to it,
Yeah, for sure. So what comics are you reading right now? Where does the love continue?
So Hickman's run on X-Men, I think if anybody is like not at least a fan, even if it's hard to kind of keep up with all of them, if you're not a fan, I don't want to say I don't consider you a fan of comics, but I'm going to question your love of great storytelling. So Hickman's run is really, really big. I need to get into death metal. I like Dark Knight's metal, but a lot of those kind of series, sometimes the endings, they get a little flaky for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm still, big archive stuff. I mean, with writing justice and just having the kind of the stories I'm kind of dealing with. David Hines' run on Spawn, that Armageddon arc, I loved it. And so I'm revisiting that. And a lot of indie stuff, man. There's just a ton of really, really good indie stuff out there. Is Nana and Crescent City Monsters. There's some stuff from Burning Spear Comics. They're just, honestly, there are a ton, and it would be a disservice if I tried to name them all because there are so many, and I'm going to forget somebody, and I don't want to. Constant Hustle's doing some great stuff. Concept Moon Studios is doing some great stuff. There are just a ton out there.
Yeah. You just basically named my reading list right now. So yeah, you're right.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. No, there's some really, really great books. For me, I just finished maybe a couple weeks ago, Crescent City Monsters #3, and I love the look of it. I love that noir feeling. I love the fact that it's black and white. There are just a bunch of different ways to tell stories now. And I think the availability, obviously the internet and all these other things have made it possible. And so I really admire when people are kind of stepping out like that. And I see that a lot in the indie community. I use Crescent City Monsters as a jumping point, but I feel like a lot of people are doing that. And it's really great. It's really great to see.
Yeah, it is. So let's talk about Justice. Let's break it down. Where did you get the idea for Justice? Give us just a little teaser. We want people to go download your book and buy #1 when it comes out. But what's happened so far and what's next?
Okay, so Justice 0, which is actually free on winglessent.com for download. It's the start of what will be something epic. And I mean that in terms of, the battles for good and evil are always there, right? So my take is let's do the ultimate one. Let's see how these forces really play out. Let's see my opinion of how these forces play out. Let's see, the struggle. Justice came from, I have a love-hate with horror movies, right? In horror movies, you get something like, you have something like Exorcist, right? This great, visceral, awesome, amazing movie. But the hero is always some guy that's like, God, please help. If you could just, I don't know. And so you got somebody flying across the walls and super strength, and they're punching them. They got wings, all these crazy things, right? It brings to mind the Golden Child, right? I love Eddie Murphy, right? But he's got this little dagger, and this dude is a 12-foot bat wing demon, right? And I'm like, well,
Yep.
dang, if one side can have these crazy powers, why can't the other? If we're talking about wars and the Trojan War, War of the Roses, all these big wars that lasted for years and years and years, right? It's all this carnage. There are good and bad on both sides. There are these heroes on both sides, and it always depends on your perception of things. Why not take that back to the original war and the ripples that still go through there? To me, that's always been a really, really engaging idea. A really, really engaging idea of being in the most perfect place ever and still not being satisfied. Dante's Inferno is obviously a very, very big part of my mythos and how it came to be. Dogma, just a few other things that I think are just pretty awesome and explore. It gives me a chance, if no one else, to explore some of the things that I wonder about religion and about science and about human nature and about God's nature in relation to how humans can understand it. If you believe that, and if you don't, it's there for that too.
Yeah.
I also don't just because it's based in an Abrahamic tradition, that doesn't mean that's all that it covers. I love the Marvel theory of where you have Norse gods and you have all the High Fathers get together, and just all these different things where you can see how cultures are so closely related, yet so far apart in beautiful ways.
Yeah, definitely. I'm reading issue 0. I totally agree. Everything you said came through in issue 0, where you don't have to be religious to get what's going on. You don't have to know everything about an Abrahamic religion to know what's going on. And I can't wait to see where it goes, man. I can't wait to see where it goes. So speaking of where it's going, you're getting ready for a Kickstarter campaign.
Yes.
How can people support that?
Okay, so our Kickstarter campaign is scheduled for June 12th. It should open on June 12th, 9 a.m. West Coast time, so 12 East Coast time. There will be multiple tiers, multiple chances for just your casual reader to pick up the PDF. For your crazy Wingless fan, which I love you guys. If there's anybody that's crazy Wingless fan, I love you guys. To get some collector editions, get some signed prints. I have a really amazing art team, including Gladson Ribeiro, Fabio Samao, Nestor Rajula. Maroon Makers, my letterers. They put together a really great project. I'd like to be like, oh man, I did everything, and I should no, but really, I'm just fortunate that people understand my crazy scribbles and my crazy notes, and they can bring this vision to life. There are going to be, as we expand what my writing partner and my head of creative development for Wingless Comics calls the Wingverse. As we expand, you're going to get to see some more characters. A fan favorite, Caliburn, is going to have a backup feature. Cool. Malachi Bailey's own Her is also going to have a backup feature. We're really expanding the universe to try and show and highlight the diversity of character, the diversity of ideas and storytelling. We view it as like a palette, right? Like a palette, you can have blue, but you've got all these different shades of blue. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do with the Wingverse, and just bring a lot of different things to the table. So like I said, on June 12th, it's going to be across all social media, obviously. We're going to have links everywhere. I'm going to be screaming from rooftops. We've got a lot of really, really cool surprises in store for all the fans and all the people who just stop in to check it out.
Yeah, if you've been following Wingless Entertainment on Instagram, at least, you got some really cool Kickstarter rewards. I saw a really cool statue.
Yeah, I'm actually, I think I'm more geeked than anybody for the statue. I'm not gonna lie. That is Jalilson Santos. He's an extremely, extremely talented sculptor. He put his heart and soul into it. It's amazing. It's actually getting shipped to me right now. The first one that the pictures were taken of is getting shipped to me now. I can't wait to put it on my desk. I'm like a little kid checking for the mail every day. It's rendered really well. We're actually, well, you know what? I'll give you the exclusive. We're actually getting one done of Caliburn as well as we speak. And
Awesome.
it will, the previews will debut on the Kickstarter. You'll be able to see the process as it kind of develops. It's going to be ready to ship by the end of the campaign as well.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So we're adding a few things. Like I said, it's some little Easter eggs and a couple other things. They're going to be some really, really pleasant surprises for everyone.
That's really cool. I'm excited for Justice to continue, and I'm also been so excited to see the previews of her kind of coming out little by little. I can't wait to. I'm gonna have to talk to Malachi at some point to get him on here because I'm excited about that.
Yeah. No, Malachi is, man, his energy. We're kind of yin and yang sometimes. And sometimes I'm just really like, yeah, we need to do the work. And Malachi's, oh my God, Brian, we're doing, his energy is so infectious and it's so great. And he's so passionate about the story. He's so passionate about his characters. His love of comic books, I think, even drowns me sometimes. He's like, yeah, well, Brian, you remember in X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 74, they said, I'm like, dude, no, I don't. I really don't. I know what you're talking about, but no, I don't know the exact line. He's just, he's so steeped in that lore and he loves it so much. And he brings that to his projects. The preview that you guys are going to see, it's a her issue 0 as well. So it's a mini issue. You guys are going to love it. I can promise you that.
That's awesome. So we got Justice, we got Halliburton, we got her. Anything else coming down the road for Wingless?
Yes. We've got, again, like I keep saying, there's some really, really nice surprises. There's one I will not key you guys in on yet. I will let you know. I've posted some cryptic stuff, but Nightfall is coming. So be prepared. That should be October. It is going to be something like you have never seen before. Nightfall is coming. We also have a couple more characters. Again, we are definitely big on diversity and not people always, I don't want to say people always say. People on the other side of arguments always say something like diversity for diversity's sake, right? Mm-hmm. That is probably one of the most ridiculous phrases I've ever heard. What needs to happen is the diverse set of voices that we actually have in the world need to be given a platform. Since I have this little itty bitty small platform, I want to do that as much as I can. We have a character called Lux, which will debut next year. Your spunky, teenage coming of age story. I think it's necessary, and I think it's necessary to be told from that point of view. Again, we have some other things that we have in the works that we're still kind of ironing out, but our focus really is going to be on just, there is a lot of beautiful art out there, that there is no doubt. I think the depth of story needs to be just as big. As much as I love Image Comics when it came out, the stories were all over the place. Yeah. I think we all, from each series, you got maybe 3 or 4 issues in the beginning that were good, and then it just jumped all over the place. So while you had beautiful art, you had no depth. Wingless Comics is about the depth of story. We know that there are artists that could just paint the Sistine Chapel again, and they're going to bring us beautiful stuff. We want to honor their talent by telling great stories, and we want to honor our fans and supporters by telling stories that they can relate to and stories that resonate with them.
Yeah, I agree. The art and the storytelling in indie comics right now, in my opinion, far surpasses what you find from some of the big studios and big labels. It's 100%
wonderful
right now.
Yeah,
I think you and I have talked briefly through Instagram maybe at some point about just how I think, correct me if I'm wrong, about telling the stories that we miss from our childhood.
Yes.
And the stuff like Milestone Media and just all those great comics from the 90s. And if you miss that, man, you can find it in indie right now.
Yeah. One of the things that I find kind of interesting and telling is like when Jeff Johns' big run and some of the stuff that he did, not in like Green Lantern, but like some of the stuff he did with like Batman and Superman. Mm-hmm. He was bringing back some of those old 70s and crazy ideas, which are like pretty fun, but they're like a little cartoony.
Yeah.
But there's such an over-reliance on not doing that it doesn't make sense, right? Everybody can't be Wolverine. Everybody can't be some gruff, hard hero. Like everyone looks nostalgically back at Thundercats. I love Thundercats, right? But if you really go back and watch Thundercats, like it really doesn't make much sense. It's just kind of fun, and the characters look amazing, and it does some stuff, and blah blah blah. But you need that sometimes. Sometimes you need that jumping point to, you've got some great stuff, some cool stuff, and that's why when you do even though it folded, when you do a Thundercats revival that brings in that depth of story, it's actually amazing. It didn't go where it should have for other reasons, but if you look back on that Thundercats revival, it was an amazing thing. Look at Voltron. Look at She-Ra. These things are, we took some really good jumping points from our childhood that were really there for action figures, and now we're adding the stories they always should have had. Yeah. And it's like, oh man, this stuff is actually pretty amazing. Brandon Easton's doing some G1 stuff, with Transformers. Right. It hasn't debuted yet, but I'm biting my nails waiting for it to come out, because it's going to be great. He's going to add that depth of story.
Yep. Yep. So speaking of diversity, speaking of indie comics, I would say that you're part of a resurgence in Black indie comics right now. Do you have any other indie titles from that genre you're following? I mean, that you haven't already mentioned?
Ajiba Anderson's Horseman. I've really just dived into, we're just going to make up a word now. Yeah. I've really just jumped into that. No, I didn't. I just say jumped. It's really expansive and it's great. I'm waiting for Changa and the Jade Obelisk from Milton Davis and 133. Robert Jeffries' Route 3 series, as well as his The Crossing. Okay, anything from Robert Jeffries. So we'll just cover that right there. Everything from Robert Jeffrey. I'm in all of that. I'm following that. Who else? There are some other ones that are set to debut that have not yet. There is also Scarlet Knight, Defender of the Block. I need to pick that up. Yeah. The good thing, the one thing that I like about indie comics right now is it gives me that old comic book feeling, even though I'm not going into a store, to where I'm always like, oh man, I got to pick this up. Oh, I got to pick that up. Oh, I can't do it this week. Okay, I got to do it next week. It always felt like when you used to go into a comic shop, there was always something new to get, and you were like, oh man, I'm behind the. I'm under the gun here. I feel the same way about indie comics. Once I start talking about it, I'm like, oh man, I got to go back through my list and which ones did I miss for next week? And I really love that. I love that about indie comics. There are so many. And like I said, it'll be a disservice if I try to name them all, because there are so many that are great that I'm really kind of, interested in checking out.
Awesome, man. So, hey, if you could do a Justice crossover with any other indie title out there right now, what would it be?
Funny you should ask that. The way I will answer that is Nightfall is coming.
Uh-oh.
And right. I will leave that there.
All right. Awesome. Well, we and I especially will be impatiently waiting for that. So there's a lot of people out there. Kickstarter is full of indie comics that people are trying to launch. If you could give others any advice who are wanting to get into the industry, what would it be?
Cultivate your craft. It's very, what I've learned, even in my own experience, it's very easy to tell when someone's quote unquote art isn't bad, right? Let's say their anatomy is off. Let's say, there are technical glitches with their artwork, right? That's very easy to see. Rob Liefeld has dealt with that his entire career, good or bad, right? He's dealt with it, right?
Yep.
It's very easy to see that. It's very easy to see when the lettering is off. Being a visual medium, it's very easy to see a lot of things. If a card doesn't work, it's very easy to tell, right?
Right.
One thing that's not very easy to tell is if the craft of your writing and your story forming is not good. You're kind of hip deep in the story before you know that. So my advice would be anyone who's writing, one, continue writing. Two, don't be afraid to pick up a book or do some courses. There are some very great resources out there. I keep Brian Michael Bendis's comic writing book handy. I keep Frank Miller's, some of his notes, because I like old Frank Miller, handy. I keep, it's not called writing comics for DC Comics. I keep that handy. In order to be a writer, I believe you have to be a good reader. Stephen King said that. Alan Moore said that. Like a ton of people said that. I think it's very, very true. Hone your craft. That's going to be the first part. The next part is be realistic about the budget. People think that comics are inexpensive. I realize that they're only sold for about $5, but they are not inexpensive to create. You're going to spend quite a bit of money, so be realistic about your budget. And the next thing, just honestly, in every step, research what you do. Don't just go ask someone else who's there. Ask them how they got the information. And if somebody says, hey, man, Google such and such, don't get mad. Don't be afraid to Google it. I spend hours on Google, even, quote unquote, being in the industry, man, I'm always there. How do I do this? How do I do that? Take your time, plan out. If you're going to do a Kickstarter campaign, don't try and launch it a month after you've made your ID, your login. No, take some time, research, do it step by step, because it's going to take time. It's going to take a process. And remember that whatever it is, it's going to take time. Be realistic about your goal. $10,000 for my comic book and no one knows you. Don't do that to yourself, because you're just going to hurt yourself. Be realistic about your goal. Set some goals and you can achieve them. Things that are achievable are things you can tick off the list. No one thought people could run under a 4-minute mile until somebody put that 4-minute mile on their list and said, I'm going to beat it. So make achievable goals, push through the boundaries, and again, do your research, do your due diligence. And if something's not right, if it is your letters or your art or your whatever, learn to communicate that to your team. You just make a stronger team when you can say, hey, I don't like this based on this. I need it to look this way. I need it to look that way. And then they can talk to you. Hey, man, you might be wrong, and take that into account too. I want to see it this way. You might be wrong. Sometimes your artist is going to come with a panel that you envisioned one way, and they're going to do it a different way, and it's going to blow your mind. Let them blow your mind.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's awesome advice. That's, I hope people watch these interviews all the way to the end, because some of the best advice for people wanting to come get in the industry happen at the end of these interviews we've been doing. So that's great advice, man. So tell people one more time, where can they find Justice? Where can they find Wingless Comics at? Okay, so you can download and link through all of our social through www.winglessent.com. That's winglessent.com. Our Facebook is actually at Wingless Comics or Justice Comics, unfortunately, because Facebook is mean like that. Our Instagram is at Wingless Comics, as is our Twitter. We are all over everywhere. You can search my name, Brian J. Lambert. I come up. I'm pretty noticeable, I would say. Again, you can download Justice Issue 0 for free on winglessent.com and get a peek in the universe, a peek into some of the things that are hiding, just around the corner for our hero. Again, we're going to be all over social media. Check back at Kickstarter. Justice Issue 1, Something Wicked. That's all of our tags. We'll be here with you guys as much as we can. I think we're just going to come and start bombarding your studio. Hey, that's cool, man. That's cool. Holding up posters in the background. That's us, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Check out that Kickstarter. By the time we post this, it'll be just about time for that Kickstarter to go live. So head on over, get informed when it launches, and download Justice Issue number 0 to get your feet wet. I guarantee you'll love it and want to support that Kickstarter campaign. Thanks, Brian. Thank you for having me.